Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. I've taken creatine but end up with muscle cramps. I do stay hydrated yet still have a problem. Any ideas? Oh man. Well, I'll give you one bit of advice. If you're getting cramps from creatine, you never, ever, ever, ever want to go on oral anabolics, probably. It'd be a real bad idea then, because it'll take that to the next level. But that being said, let's talk about this for a moment. A lot of different things can cause cramping. Could be something to do with your training programming. It could be a hydration issue. And I think a lot of times when guys say they stay hydrated, you also have to go, well, what exactly do you mean by hydrated? You're talking about just water? Because water by itself isn't that great for muscle hydration. I would say maybe plug in your numbers, plug in the food you eat, look at all of your electrolytes. You need to look at your sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, see where those are at. Okay, because that is very, very, very likely to be your culprit. Creatine shouldn't generally cause muscle cramps, particularly, again, if you're well hydrated. Now, keep in mind, there can also be some psychosomatic things going on there too, because if you had heard someone say that creatine can cause cramps, you might be getting cramps due to that. And people will say that's crazy, but keeping in mind, when people have been given placebo supplements or placebo drugs and stuff in the lab, even lifters, they get side effects. Okay? And you have to note that. And I know that sounds crazy, but when people are given fake anabolics in lab-controlled studies, they get side effects. They get steroid side effects from a sugar pill. So perspective there. Now, that aside, make sure that your electrolytes are up, because you may not be hydrated. If you're just drinking a bunch of water, you might not be as hydrated as you think you are. Other thing to look at is make sure that there's nothing in your training that's causing it. Like maybe you've been doing a bunch of really slow negatives or something. Okay? You're doing something in your training that can contribute to cramping. Really high rep band work sometimes can cause cramping. Again, you've got to mitigate that volume. So maybe look at specifically what exercises you're doing. Maybe you've added a new exercise in that's causing some cramping to a novel training response. Like for me, when I first add in glute ham raises, I tend to get it. If I do too many sets of glute ham raises and say reverse hypers in the same workout, I tend to get hamstring cramps. Okay, so maybe look a little closer at your training. Make sure that that's not contributing. Look at what muscles are cramping and see if there's something you're doing in your training. Look at all your electrolytes. Make sure you're not having an issue with too little potassium or too little magnesium, or that you're not trying to follow a really low salt diet or something. Again, silly stuff bodybuilders do. Just be aware these things can cause these problems that you're experiencing. All right, next question. More of an attitude question. How do you deal with haters? Like, how do you not care about what people think and the trolls when you post videos on YouTube? Honestly, this is something that took me years to get over. Okay? I've been doing this a very, very long time. How do I deal with haters? I simply pretend they don't exist. In other words, I made a promise to myself, which I have kept years ago now, that I would never watch any negative video made about me. That I would never look at any websites or anything that is showing anything negative about me, and I just literally ignore it. Because if I made it part of my life, those things would bother me. I literally live my life as if none of that actually exists. Okay? Now, people will say, but don't you get channels or whatever banned? Well, there's an automated tool to do that. You don't have to watch any of those videos to do that. In other words, if people are stealing your content, YouTube has a built-in tool that gives you a list of everyone who it thinks looks like they've stolen your videos and re-uploaded them. Even if they tried to do it as fair use, their system cuts through and says, this doesn't appear to be fair use. What would you like to do? You just go, there's a tab for that. And I just hit the button down it, deleted up to 30 videos with one form, where you just type your name in and check a few boxes and type your name another time. And you just click all of them down the row, and it takes, to delete 30 videos takes about 1 minute. And I don't actually look at any of it, and I go on with my life. And I only do that because they're stealing my content. If they weren't actually stealing my videos and re-uploading them, which is again theft, they're literally stealing my copyrighted content, which is technically illegal, I wouldn't care. But I just ban those channels, and you don't have to look at any of it to do it. You don't actually have to see what they've done or said. That's the beauty of a system like that. But the way that I go about it is I literally pretend they don't exist, and when I get people who come and say stupid trolly stuff on any of my social media, I just hit the ban button and move on. Okay? That way I don't have to see it, and there's no emotion involved. Because people will say, well, is that being sensitive? No, I do that so that I don't ever have to deal with it. In other words, if I just get rid of those people, it becomes just routine. Meaning there's no emotional connection. When you just ban trolls and haters all the time, you get to a point to where you don't really care what they said. All you know is that they're another troll, blah, blah, blah. It's probably the same guy you banned 37 times already on a new account. I just hit the ban button and move on and never think about it again. Okay? You deal with haters by not caring. You have to literally have thick enough skin that you can just at least see the stuff, ban it, and move on. And I personally go about my life as if they do not exist. So a lot of times you'll get people, and I'll even get a client or someone who will mention, well, someone did make this video, and I'm like, bro, I really don't care. I don't want to know. I don't watch it. So the fact of the matter is, a lot of times people say, well, all these people say all this bad stuff about you. I'm like, but I don't actually see it. You know more about it than I do. I literally don't watch any of it. I don't know. I don't care. And my life is better for it. Like, I'm actually so much happier and more productive when I just pretend they don't exist. And so here's what I would say to the people who are dealing with that. Learn to let go and just ban those people. Don't waste your time thinking about anything that they are saying. Okay? It's not going to help you in any way. The attitude is to ignore it and pretend it's not there. And if they try to bring it to any of your web pages or your channels or your life, you just block. Block and move on. That's how you deal with haters. They don't matter. You're way more important to them than they are to you. Okay? Don't give them the energy. All right, next question. What do you feel is the biggest difference between the way academics advise to train versus coaches without advanced degrees? I generally find academics are utterly terrified of lifting heavy. Okay? And I do mean that. One of the biggest trends I've noticed is that a lot of the academics out there have an immense, enormous fear of heavy weight. They're scared to prescribe heavy weight to their lifters. They're scared to lift heavy, and they want to focus on just keeping everything as light as they possibly can, even in the context of progressive overload. Hitting a 1 rep max for any of those guys is terrifying and scary to them, and unless you compete in powerlifting, they don't hand it to anyone. Whereas in the coaches who are just really, really great coaches, prescribe max lifts to everyone. Okay? I know a lot of really good coaches who again, prescribe it to their housewife clients. They have them max out. Because maxing has enormous benefits psychologically. We could discuss the physical and everything else, but there's enormous psychological benefits to knowing and testing 1 rep maxes. It's an enormous confidence builder, and a good coach understands that. Whereas in the academic, let's just be honest here. And I don't want to paint this brush universally. I find a lot of academics, even though they might have an interest in lifting, are kind of pussies. They can't handle heavy weight psychologically. They're afraid of it. They're afraid of it to a large extent. There's a fear there. And that's a pattern I've noticed, whereas in serious coaches are not afraid to have lifters, and people just lift heavy relatively often, if not all the time. That's probably the largest difference. But again, it's the academics I've noticed tend to be very skittish in their training, and they're very skittish in what they prescribe in terms of training. And essentially, as most of us will describe them, a big chunk of them, in my experience, are just basically pussies. Right? They're just pussies. And there's not much you can do about that other than help them change their attitude. And again, I want to make it clear that it is not universally true. I do know some exceptions, but we're talking about as a general rule, the largest difference that I notice. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.